All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our fourth of four fall 2017 webinars on competency assessment. I'm Eric Brichto. I'm the Vice President and Counsel for CAMI, and normally I'd be joined in kicking this off by Brad Bavay from Trinity University, but unfortunately he can't be with us today, so just me. A couple of things before we get started. We will be recording this session, and these recordings will be made available on our website later this week. The other three recordings are available. If you have questions, please write them in the attendee chat box in the upper left-hand corner, and we will do our best to address these as we go. But due to the webinar format, there's no way that I can take you off mute. Before we get started, I want to let you know that this webinar series is brought to you at no charge through the generosity of the Don Gideon Foundation. The Don Gideon Foundation was founded in 2015 in memory of Dawn M. Gideon, a truly strong, intelligent, and creative force in life and in her chosen profession. Dawn dedicated herself to working with struggling healthcare providers and finding creative avenues to success. Honoring the memory of Dawn Gideon, a graduate from the CAMI accredited program at University of Pittsburgh, this series serves to advance the quality of healthcare management education by sharing best practices in competency-based education. Now, what we're going to do today, I'm going to start with an overview of our approach, CAMI's approach to competency assessment and where we've been, and then I'm going to introduce our speaker who's going to cover his program's approach to this difficult area. In the 2013 criteria, our old criteria, competency assessment was housed in 3C3, which stated that programs will evaluate the extent to which students and graduates attain the competencies and use that information for continuous improvement. This was and continues to be the most missed criteria that we see. Um, 74% of programs received a partially met or worse on this criterion. And because of that, in the 2017 criteria, we split this into two separate criteria, 3C2 and 3D2. Now, 3C2 is the first part of the old criterion and requires that programs regularly evaluate the extent to which each student attains the competencies at the level targeted by the program. And the second part is new. We'll have a process in place for communicating that information to the students. So that last clause is the new bit. And the second criterion, 3D2, programs will collect and analyze and use this information for continuous improvement. I imagine that programs are going to do a little better on 3D2 than they will on 3C2 going forward. Now, before I introduce our speaker, it's important to note that neither of the two programs he's going to be discussing have undergone CAMI accreditation yet. So as a CAMI representative, I can't have an opinion officially on whether this approach meets or will meet 3C2 and 3D2, but that's not really the point of this webinar series. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to competency assessment. If there was one approach that would work for everyone, everyone would be doing it, and we'd have 100% METs on 3C3 and our new criteria. So a key purpose of this webinar series is to present diverse approaches to competency assessment so that programs of all sizes, shapes, and settings can find or create a solution that works for them. Now, with all that being said, it's my honor to introduce our speaker today, our presenter, Dr. Jerry Ludlow, who is the interim dean at the School of Community and Rural Health at the University of Texas Health Science Center, Northeast. Jerry?
Thank you, Eric, and thank you everyone for joining us today. It's a privilege to be presenter on the webinar, and I hope that collectively as a profession we can move forward and improve the programs through assessment and other didactic improvements and experiential improvements for our students. So I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this today, so thank you. Can I have the controls, Eric? There we go. All right. The objectives today is really focusing on the assessment process with a process that's based in faculty, course level work, and the roll-up of that work to a programmatic level so that you can get visibility not only from the program level, but all the way down to the individual student level with regard to student learning outcomes and competencies that are important to your program. It's a tool-based approach using Excel and Adobe PDF files. So we created this program because we didn't have a lot of funds to actually create or integrate an analytics tool in a learning management system, so we used Excel as the basis for this. So we will go through the tool, how to conduct the course assignment assessment, link to the tool, be able to utilize this assessment tool. It also has an embedded gradebook, and be able to request and perform faculty peer review. That's built into this tool as well. And then understand the requirements of the overall system as multiple tools come together and work with a compiler that's built in Excel as well. And then on the other end of this is the individual course faculty teaching readiness inventory tool, where faculty will identify constructs and subconstructs, tools, applications in their course, and look at how students are better focused to learn the material of a particular course. What's not covered in the objectives is each assignment has a rubric associated with it that links back to competencies or student learning outcomes through the course objectives. Those will not be covered today, but that is a unique and important aspect at the faculty to course level. The resources that are required to use the process that I'm going to present today, that I've been working on for a number of years now at programs that are primarily CEF accredited or will be CEF accredited. I tend to go to new startups and build programs and build colleges and schools. So many times at startup you don't have the ability to meet the criteria for a specialty accreditation. We fall in both Georgia Southern, where I was previously, and now at University of Texas Health Science Center, we fall under SACS, the Southern Accrediting Commission, and the specialty accrediting bodies that we're going to focus on here in the future are CEF, because we have a public health program, but also with our soon-to-be MHA program, we will focus on CAMI specialty accreditation as well. So what you need for this program that I'm going to talk about today is Excel, MS Word for other documentation purposes, and then a PDF reader to save some of these files in a PDF format, just easier to file and send this way. There's also an assessment tool that each faculty member receives for each course. That's a template in Excel, the course syllabus that's derived from the faculty, and then the time it takes to set up the tool for each course is somewhere between 20 and 40 minutes for each course during the semester, and about 30 to 50 minutes of peer review if you decide to use a peer review on this particular course, and then about 20 to 40 minutes if the faculty member wants to utilize the Teaching Readiness Inventory tool. That's also available. The first step in any course is a faculty member creating a syllabi that matches the course catalog and the objectives of the course. And the syllabi really is the contract, the document between the faculty, the course, and the students in the program. And you'll take that material, the program learning outcomes, student learning outcomes, competencies, course objectives, and link that to the faculty assessment tool that's provided for each course. That's basically what we're talking about here. It's a little hard to see unless you expand the screen, but the student learning outcomes or program learning outcomes all the way to the objectives of the course can be embedded in the tool. The tool basically is a tool that each faculty member fills out per course and puts in the information, what year, semester, what type of courses. Is it a hybrid course? Is it an online? Is it traditional? The program that it's primarily integrated with, the course number and designator and course title, and then the instructor name as well. Most of this is the demographic, the logistical information you need to do queries and other things on the other end of the process at the compiler level. And what they do is each assignment that's evaluated, in this example in the template at the faculty course level, is there's 10 assignments available that are evaluated during the course of a semester for each course. You could build more if you wanted to, but they link the course assignment at the assignment level. Of course, we mentioned before, each assignment will have a rubric built into the course that the faculty will use as the specific evaluative template for assigning a grade or a point value to an assignment. But each assignment is listed in the tool, and then it's weighted. So if you have 5 assignments and they're equally weighted, 20%, you load those into the tool, into the yellow highlighted areas in the tool. Then is this assignment, for each assignment that they load in, is this assignment linked to a particular program learning or student learning outcome or course objective? And it captures a yes and no. It's a simple yes and no. Is this linked to this competency or this student learning outcome or this course objective? Then as you load in all the assignments and the weights, it's auto-generated in the program. And as you see, there's MHA program competencies listed on the far right side. and you can see you can link each assignment that's loaded to a specific competency, and in this case, none of them are linked, but the ones that are linked to specific competencies would be acknowledged at that point in the setup process. You can also do peer review, as I mentioned before. You can send the file to another faculty member for peer review. There's a second tab that we'll talk about in a minute where they actually review, is this course, along with the syllabus and rubrics that the instructor would send the reviewer, does this assignment, for example, does it really truly link to that student learning outcome, and to what extent does it link? So you can build in a peer review process. We did this in an automated fashion because what we found in certain specialty areas, like health economics or health finance, there may not be another suitable reviewer for this material within a small department or small college or school, and the ability to send this to a colleague at another institution to do the review was very helpful for us. There's also a gradebook built into the tool. As you have listed all the assignments, the weights, and you've linked it to the student learning outcomes and the competencies and the course objectives. All that linking goes down into a gradebook that you can load in. You can hand load it in, or you can use your existing learning management system if you would like to load in the student information. That's important in order to query individual student attainment of competencies at an individual student report level within the compiler. But there's an auto-generated gradebook. You simply put in their evaluated grades on a 100% point system from 0 to 100%, and that will calculate the grades for you, a relatively simple matrix. But the important part is it links to those specific assignments that are further linked to those student learning outcomes and competencies and course objectives in the system, in the tool. What you also get in the assessment system, once the semester is completed and you've put all the evaluations for each assignment for each student in the tool, it will give you a rundown of the student by student learning outcome, program outcome, competency, course objective, etc., and how well each student performed, and also the class as a whole. What's really helpful in process improvement is when you see the class as a whole, all 20 or 30 students, well, they did real well on the first 3 student learning outcomes, but the 4th didn't meet our standard. They only scored a 75% collectively with a small standard deviation. They didn't meet the standard that we would like to see of 80 or 85 or more percent. So you can hone in on a specific student learning outcome, change the course material, add more content, relook at your rubric on how you evaluate it, or change the assignment altogether to get a better way to evaluate a specific aspect of the student learning outcome or the competency. So at the end of the semester, each each faculty member, once each student has been evaluated, information is put into the tool, they send the tool back to the assessment coordinator, whoever that is. It could be the chair, it could be a staff member, and then they can reuse the tool just by updating the information and changing out the students next time if they teach the exact same course, or tweak the tool according to changes they make in the course. Hopefully they tweak it based upon improvements they've made in a quality improvement process where the information from the tool for the specific course is available to them since they own that tool. But they do send the tool in order for the assessment coordinator to take the information from the tool and put it into a compiler. It's also important that the peer review process is closed-looped. that the peer reviewer sends the information back to the faculty member, and that the faculty member shares that information with their leadership in their department or school, so you have a record of those peer reviews, because this is also very important for the quality improvement process, the continuous improvement process, that you get that peer review aspect to make changes that are positive to your student learning. Then the assessment system, as I said, has the peer review. This is an example of the peer review where each course, if you choose to have the peer review, each assignment is evaluated by the peer reviewer with regard to each student learning outcome. How well does that assignment, based upon the syllabus, based upon whatever material the faculty member sent the reviewer, based upon the rubric, how well does this assignment evaluate this student learning outcome? And there's a Likert scale from does not evaluate it to robustly evaluates it, and everything in between. So there's a 5-point Likert scale that the reviewer can use for each assignment as it relates to each student learning outcome or competency. It does take a little bit of time, but I think the investment in each other, in fellow faculty members, is valuable for the improvement process. So with the assessment reports that you can get from this, you create each tool for each course. You have all the material information from that that's sent to a compiler that will allow you to create reports and query from many different angles. So the assessment reports can be based on program student learning outcomes. You can identify those outcomes for improvement, and then identify constructs, theories, models, or foundational knowledge that needs to be improved or taught differently. Our students evolve. The generational changes that we all have looked at and have dealt with over the years, we see our students change, and we need to change with them, and this information does help us do that. You can also identify courses where key knowledge areas should be taught or would be taught better, where you can look at your total program of study for your students in order to make those changes and move content to areas that may be more applicable or have a better link to practicality for students' learning. You can also use a teaching readiness tool, which I'll show you in a second, that you can focus at the course level where the faculty member can use Bloom's taxonomy, learning style assessment, frequency and modality of channels used to teach the material with regard to where they think the students are at in the process, and they sort of get a quantifiable gauge to, I need to spend more time on this, I've spent too much time on this, or I'm about right. So this gives them some guide to do that. This is the high-level view of how the system was used at Georgia Southern and how I intend to move it forward here at UT Health Northeast, is looking at everything we talked about. It's really a faculty-generated tool focused on student learning. What are those key constructs, theories, models, foundational knowledge, applications? What do they need to know, and how we can create an environment to have them learn that better? And these tools, which include the Teaching Readiness Matrix and the assessment tool, come together to form the information you need to make course as well as programmatic changes. It also is important, as a few years ago, we realized that some of our students needed to have some prerequisite material, prerequisite knowledge coming into our program, or we create prerequisites to certain courses because we realized taking a course out of sequence was actually hurting the students. So we made some changes to programs of study and how what we expected students to enter the program with some basic foundational knowledge. So all that was useful in guiding those decisions at the faculty level. This is the Teaching Readiness Inventory tool, and what it basically does is you take learning elements. What are the elements of learning based on Bloom's taxonomy, learning styles, and you match it to the student, where the student is. Where does the instructor, the faculty member, think the student's level of learning is? And it has a calculation based upon frequency and different modalities of teaching, comes up with a quantifiable way to look at, well, I'm spending enough time on this construct or this tool or this application, or I'm not spending enough time. And then the instructor can change the number of modalities they use to teach it. It may be a lecture accompanied with a kinesthetic exercise, accompanied with graphics, etc., and modify the course to encompass more of the learning styles of the students in the program. And also, you may just simply have to hit the material longer and have more frequency of the student using the material. And this just gives you some type of guide. I found this especially helpful for younger faculty members that just wanted some type of rubric for themselves to know, am I teaching this material properly? Am I hitting the key points? Am I spending enough time on each individual construct? And this gives them some guide with which to talk with their mentor or department chair or whomever. Instructional designers use this as well to look at how much time on the learning management system, the learning platform, the web-based learning, how much time do we need to spend on different constructs for students to better understand and learn. This feeds back into that assessment tool where we plugged in the assignments and we linked them to the student learning outcomes, because from that tool, coupled with this inventory tool that's at the teacher faculty level, you use that over a period of 2 or 3 semesters, you start seeing patterns that you wouldn't otherwise have seen, and you can make better changes. The key is documenting those patterns, having some type of template or method to document what the faculty member, the instructional designer, and the students are learning, so that you can document the changes, you have the quantifiable evidence that supports those changes, and then you make the change and then monitor the change and see if it gave you the outcome you expect. The documentation of that becomes critical in meeting the criterion that Eric mentioned earlier. In the teaching readiness tool, Bloom's taxonomy is used as the base of the learning hierarchy, as well as the teaching modalities, the teaching and learning styles, the visual, verbal, auditory, kinesthetic learning styles. And it's actually very important, I found. Years ago, I just kind of took this for granted, and in a way was a very selfish faculty member because I said, well, this is my method, this is how I'm teaching. And then as I matured over the years, I said, no, that's really a selfish way to teach. I need to learn my students' modalities of learning. What are their dominant and secondary learning styles? Had students take that VART test. It's a free online test, and learned at the beginning of each semester what their learning style was. And it really does make a difference on how you present material and how you emphasize material. Just as a small caveat, one of our students last semester, she's a WIC, a Women, Infants, and Children program manager in one of the counties nearby. She's in our program. She gave this VART test to her staff, and then in turn used the VART test with her clients and realized all their material was wrong, and started making changes to the material to teach new mothers with new babies in the WIC program how to better understand the material, so she presented it differently. And she says it makes a huge difference in her client's attitude and interaction with their staff. So their outcomes, they're still pending those outcomes, but they seem, at least anecdotally, that there makes a big difference with that. I assume, and have seen this in my own teaching over the years, that learning those student learning styles makes a huge difference as a professor, and it gives me a lot more satisfaction as a professor to understand that and modify and tailor my course to the students. This is another just large flow to look at. The faculty utilize and complete the tool to assess each course at the assignment level as it's linked to the student learning outcomes, competencies, and course objectives. We have the peer review requirement on some of these courses. I usually have a course evaluated at least every 3 years, some newer faculty maybe every other year, to get feedback from peers. All those reports come together to the assessment coordinator and department chairs to use that data to make improvements to their programs. Also, the nice thing about the compiler is all those tools come in and are compiled, and the report suite can be developed from that. You actually have a data repository, and you can create all sorts of reports from the program level, the course level. Do you want to compare traditional courses with hybrid courses with online courses? In many organizations, there's a comparability report you have to do. This gives you that evidence that students in all three venues learned about the same. There's no significant difference in their learning of these student learning outcomes and competencies across platforms. And you have a large report suite for any college or university or institution level reporting that is asked of you. This is just a shot of what the compiler looks like. There's actually a data tab in the back of the assessment tool that you pull the data from, and you load it into the compiler, and it can hold up to 2,500 students or 2,500 inputs a semester, and you can use the compiler from there. Of course, you can build on it and expand it as you wish. The other thing that's important about the compiler is you can design your reports. There's a report suite set up to accommodate multiple levels of data view. You can look at the individual student level, which when a reviewer of any kind comes and says, can I see the student learning outcome and competency achievement of these 5 students, and you go and 3 minutes later you hand them the reports and you say, here's their level of attainment in each of these student learning outcomes and competencies to date, their programs of study, they're this far into the program, it says something. It says that you have a handle on the data, not only of the program, but each individual student, and then that information can be used by their advisor, which gets at another element of the criterion Eric talked about. Each student report at the end of the semester is given to their advisor, and the advisor can go over the report with them. And you're not talking about grades per se, you're talking about achievement toward a certain level of mastery that's expected in the program for each student learning outcome and each competency. That, coupled with tangible evidence, portfolio of projects, reports, etc., gives you a little bit bigger, more fuller flavor of where that student is in your program and what they achieved. This is an example of one of the compiler reports. This was from Georgia Southern, and it pulls up all the information based on student learning outcome, competencies, etc., for the number of students, number of semesters, type of courses, etc., that you would want. There's also reports that get to the very detailed level of mean, median, standard deviation for each competency as well. And I'm happy to share any of these files with you and give you the passwords so you can make whatever changes you would like. And, as I say to anyone, if you're interested in having these, I'm willing to share. And if you find any errors or things to make this better, I'm more than happy to incorporate those ideas, because we all work together on this. It's really a moving target. We have a large operation to run an academic entity, but then you add the assessment, which is a very detailed orientation where you have to get many different views and perspectives looking at the data to make not only course but programmatic improvements that are focused on student learning. And it's like steering a battleship sometimes. So there's, I'm sure, better ways to improve this, but this is just one method I've found to be effective, not only with regards to ease of use and cost, but also it puts the information, it puts the tool at the faculty, course, and assignment level, gets it closer to the actual work on the ground, and then it comes together as a program, and you get to look at that data to make those changes at various levels within the program. And that's a strong improvement program if you're able to do it at the student, at the course, at the programmatic level, and even at the institutional level, because there may be institutional barriers or constraints that are acknowledged in this as well. So thank you for that, for listening, and that's all I have today.
Oh, thank you, Jerry. A great presentation. And we do have a couple of questions that have already come through. See, the first, I think you answered, or we answered. These slides will, in addition to the recordings, these slides will be made available after the webinar. And a question was asked about whether you know of any commercially available program assessment planning software.
Now there's some that are built into the analytics portion of D2L and Blackboard. There's analytics functions in there, and it goes down to where each assignment in a course within that learning management system, it starts with a specific rubric that you have to build for each assignment, that the faculty member builds for each assignment within each course, and you can roll that up. The problem with it is you have to make sure each faculty member links those specific assignment rubrics to the student learning outcome, program learning outcome, competencies, etc., so that you can identify those later. You have to create those queryable key terms in order to pull stuff easily out of that analytics system that attaches to those learning management systems. It also, from my perspective, they're still a little pricey. In some situations, it may be cost prohibitive. When we looked at it for D2L at Georgia Southern, and it was too expensive for us to buy, and it's not one of those things where one department wants to buy it and the other department doesn't. It's kind of an all or nothing thing at an institutional level, and it was just too pricey for us. And as we went down that path and I realized that it was too pricey, that's when we built this Excel program that is a surrogate. I mean, it's not embedded in the learning management system. That's a disadvantage. It's an extra set of steps for faculty. It's an extra staffing level of effort to compile the data and run the reports. But in lieu of the cost of the more advanced integrated analytics platform that goes with Blackboard or D2L, for example, those are the two I have some level of knowledge with. We went down the Excel path because everyone has Excel, and the price was right for us because we created it. basically as part of what we did. We thought it was important.
Oh, thanks. Couple follow-up questions on that line. Lori Shanderson asked whether you've heard of campus labs and if that might be a viable option.
I haven't done anything with campus labs. I've heard the term, but I don't have any experience with it, Lori, so I'm sorry.
All right. And another on the implementation side, how long did this take to implement and also to develop?
I developed this over a course of a couple years, a couple iterations. I had a first iteration 6-7 years ago, and then updated it. So when I originally built this, I guess I spent about 2 weeks building it, both the tool and the compiler, and then maybe an extra 4 or 5 days, a couple years later, and then tweaks along the way. So it took a little bit of time, but wasn't an onerous effort. It took a little bit of time to implement. At Georgia Southern, I implemented it in my department, Health Policy and Management Department. It took probably about 6 or 7 weeks to educate everybody on it and have them work on the tool. I actually had one of my doctoral GAs train faculty individually on the tool, so that was a fairly easy implementation. And then it took about a year or so for the other 4 departments in our college to implement this to varying degrees of success. It really takes a leadership effort to do this, and then to use the information that the faculty provide once the tool is complete and they send it back, and show them how the information can be used for improvement. And once you're able to do that with that leadership support, it tends to go okay. You at least get compliance, and then over time you get commitment. You get a little bit of resistance. The folks that seem to be more resistant were on the far extremes of the continuum of social science, the extreme analytics and the extreme behavioralists tended to balk a little bit, but 80% in the middle could accept it and use it fairly well.
All right, we've gotten several questions about how best to get a hold of these files and for your contact information. Jerry was gracious enough to volunteer his email address. It'll be sent out with the slides, but is it too big to be sent in an email?
No, I can send the tool, the compiler, and the teaching readiness inventory tool all in one email. That is not a problem at all. Actually, Eric, I think I sent you all 3 early on in this, as we were discussing this, all in one email.
Great.
I'll also send you the user's manual and the password because some of the tabs are locked. The tabs that contain the student learning outcomes and the competencies by program are locked. If you have a moderate level of Excel understanding and experience, you can make whatever modifications and changes you need. And I'm more than happy, at an AUPHA or a CAMI event that I'm at, if we want to get together and go over some of this, I'm more than happy to do that as well.
Great, thanks. Other questions for Jerry? While we wait to see if anyone else has a question, I have a technical question from earlier in the presentation.
Sure.
You talked about how your tool could create reports, and the new aspect of 3C2 is this requirement for a process to communicate student competency attainment levels to the individual student. So how would you be able to do that in this? Would you create a report card, or how might that work?
Well, what we do is I create a report at the individual student level. It's a report strictly on the student, and I send that report to their advisor, their academic advisor, and their academic advisor will sit down with them and talk through their attainment of mastery of student learning outcomes and competencies, along with their program of study and goals they have for themselves professionally. It's really a collaborative effort at that point, but that's how the advisors link with the students with information to make good decisions. And we've had advisors, talk to students and say, in your program of study, last year we put this course in as an elective. I really think you need more work or more exposure to these type of tools and applications and constructs. I would like you to take this course instead to help bolster your ability in this area. Your goal is to be this type of professional. This is a real need in that area, and I think we could bolster your knowledge and your ability there that will help you. I've seen that used several times with students using the advising or even the mentoring model, and it's based on those reports. But this is just one report that has their quantifiable success and mastery of student learning outcomes and competencies, but it's coupled with the program of study, and it's coupled, again, with what they want to do in their career. So the goal that they have to get the degree and what they want to do with that degree in their profession, coupled with the program of study and information from the assessment process, is sort of an individual student tailored continuous improvement program as it relates to updating and changing the program of study to meet their needs better.
Thank you. We have another question here from Emily Raviola, and she's asking for you to talk a little bit about what you feel is required of leadership for success in this area. And I think that related to what you were talking about, leadership in implementing this at a program.
Okay, I think first leadership needs to understand what assessment is and what the criteria is presented from the various accrediting bodies, the regional accrediting body that you have wherever you are, and then the specialty accrediting bodies that you may have. And some colleges and schools have more than one specialty accrediting body. You have to understand what's required of assessment, and then you have to build a culture of continuous quality improvement where data, evidence-based information gives you the tools and the information to support decisions. So you create that culture knowing what you want to achieve. You want to achieve continuous improvement that's focused on student learning. So you have to be able to assess students where they are and get them up to your standard that your program expects. How do you get to that point? Well, faculty self-governance. Faculty have to own the program, they have to own the courses, they have to own the students that are admitted into the program, and then they have to own the contract along with the student and connected to the institution to reach the level of standard and success that they expect from that graduate. So the leadership has to understand where they want to go. So you have to have a clear vision of what you're trying to achieve. And a continuous improvement culture is that goal with the focus on student learning and all the elements that go into that. You create that environment for your faculty and staff, and then you create the resources. You may need a staff member or two. You may need to invest in instructional designers. You may need to invest in faculty going to seminars and getting additional information to bring back information and tools for the rest of your faculty. And then you need to give the faculty an expectation and a standard to meet the goals of the assessment system and the improvement system, and you let them perform. The faculty have to own the process, and you have to give them the ability, with periodic guidance or mentoring as required, through your department chairs down to your faculty member, to create a whole department of advocates for assessment. So you have to really do that. So you have to have enough structure and resources and willingness at the leadership level, and then the confidence to hand the expectation over to your faculty to do wonderful things. And they'll by far, as a group, come up with ways and methods and improvement projects that will far exceed your individual leader or your small leadership team's ability to do them. So I think those are the key aspects from a leadership perspective, is, have those resources, have that willingness, know what you're expecting, have a clear vision of what you want, and then you hand that off with the confidence that your faculty and staff have the enthusiasm and skills to do a great job.
Oh, great. And a quick follow-up to that, aside from CAMI Bootcamp, are there seminars or anything else that you would recommend that would help staff become better prepared to design this type of assessment?
Well, the CAMI Bootcamp is definitely important. I also think going to your regional accreditors conference, everyone seems to be moving toward a continuous improvement process built into their culture. The Joint Commission is, CMS, star rating, all those systems are moving in that direction heavily, to even include, reimbursement for healthcare services under MACRA. So creating a culture that has that continuous improvement mentality, that you intuitively latch on to that, anything that leads you down that path is important. The Institute for Healthcare Improvement has a toolbox and courses that you can take online for, a minimal amount to learn about the tools of process improvement. There's various other programs out there that can do that. But the regional accrediting bodies that you fall under usually have conferences and even special seminars on it.